to spend a few minutes and just kind of start breaking down some of the mechanics, some of the basics of the program, and just walk you guys through that. And then Amina will take over and talk a little bit more about funding and this whole debate about paying or having volunteers. So our peer mentor program, we can take referrals from any of the other programs at ABIL. And over the years, we've expanded more and more to partner with different programs. So I wanted to just give you an idea of where we call them mentees. So where are these consumers coming from? What program are they working with at ABIL originally? So our early intervention program works with local rehabs and hospitals, and he goes into the hospital and does outreach with individuals who are newly injured, newly diagnosed, and families. So he can refer someone to have a peer mentor, so we will send somebody out with him to the hospital. That's really important. We don't send them out on their own. They go out with him. If you're going into a hospital, lots of considerations about HIPAA, of course, and you want to make sure that the hospital knows that you're coming and the social worker has requested that you be there. One of our local hospitals had a major issue with this. They were running their own peer mentor program and had somebody come in who they all knew had gone through rehab at their hospital. And this individual was selling vitamins to the people that he was mentoring. And so, of course, when the staff found out about that, it created a huge problem. Lawyers were involved, nearly shut down their mentor program. And so after that, they really had to change the way that they did things. And so they actually had us come in and we do their trainings now. So people have guidelines, and then we make appointments. People come in by appointment at the request of the nurse or the social worker. A lot of times the peer mentors are going in to talk to the families and offering support because maybe the individual that's newly injured isn't ready to hear it. Or, yeah.
Hi. Is the mic on? I just wanted to, I hate to divert a little bit, but would you tell me, because I think the HIPAA training is so critical and it's so important, especially in that hospital setting, how do you do the HIPAA training? Does the hospital have to kind of approve your HIPAA training, et cetera?
I actually have the hospital do the HIPAA part. So they've got the experts, they've got the lawyers. So I do, I talk about disability awareness and language and etiquette. I let the experts do the HIPAA training. So they will actually bring in their lawyer and their HR person. They've got a great little training that they'll go through the mentors with. And so I don't have to worry about that. But I definitely wouldn't be sending in mentors without that training. So, yeah, Judith.
Same with the hospital issue still. Do you have to have, I know volunteers in some of the hospitals in Utah have to have current immunizations, other kinds of things that the hospital wants.
Right. And so the hospital that we partnered with, because we worked together kind of from the ground up, the hospital there decided if we're sending somebody in on a one-time basis, that we don't have to do that. Other hospitals may do something differently. Now, if it's a volunteer that they really like and they're going to be using forever, they'll have them go through the hospital's volunteer orientation, immunization. They have to do TBI testing, or did I say that right? Tuberculosis? Was that right? Oh, TB, thank you. Okay, TB testing, that's what I meant. So they'll do that with them, and then I just document that the person has had that training. So. But if we're sending just one of our ABIL volunteers, we know they're going in on a one-time basis. We have an agreement with each of the hospitals, so we know what they're going to require. But we do take that referral from the social worker or the nurse. We're not just sending people in. And our staff person always goes in with them as well. Even if he's just sitting in the lobby, there's somebody official.
So these people are not...
Can I have you to the microphone?
So these people are not consumers at this point?
No.
They're just people that you go into and then they become consumers at that point, or how?
Hopefully, if they want to. I mean, sometimes we're just really meeting them for that one-time share information, share peer support with the family. So at that point, they're in the hospital. They're not consumers with ABIL. Mm-hmm. They can go ahead and go through that process.
Okay.
And some decide to do that. They may come to our sports and fitness program because now they're doing rehab, so they're getting involved with different community programs. So there's different ways that they might come to us after the hospital.
Okay, so when you talk to someone at the hospital, like a social worker, and you find out someone who needs this need, then you can send in your mentor to speak with them.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Okay.
So they're going to contact us. We don't contact them. They're going to call and say, hey, I have this individual. This individual wants this. Their family wants this. They'll arrange the time. We'll coordinate with them, and then the staff, the coordinator of our early intervention program, will go in with ABIL information, go in with the peer mentor, and facilitate that meeting for me.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, thank you.
So Amina mentioned our Community Living Options program. In that program, those consumers are individuals with developmental disabilities, and so that program can refer to our peer mentor program. And so it might be somebody who is looking to move out on their own for the first time, or they're in a group home and they're working on volunteer goals or something like that. So our peer mentors can work with individuals in that program. We might partner with our youth transitions program. I mentioned earlier that we'll go out and take mentors into the classrooms and do presentations and work one-on-one with the students. Whatever that teacher requests, whatever the coordinator requests from us, we'll do. We've even gone in and the classroom was working on budgeting, so the peer mentors came in and we did mock grocery shopping with them. And so, it was one-on-one with the students. So we can do whatever curriculum that classroom's been working on. Yeah, question?
How did you guys get into the schools?
So we have a youth transitions coordinator, and so she is the one who's advertising and marketing that program. And so she will build relationships with different school districts. She's at different conferences, youth transition fairs. A lot of our high school districts host annual youth transition fairs. She's right there at a booth marketing that program, letting the teachers know that we have a program, a curriculum that we can do on independent living skills instruction. So she already has the relationship with the schools, and so we will go out to specific schools that she would like us to come to and give presentations or do an activity.
If it's another ABIL program, the person doing that knows how to actually help you, so we will be happy during a break to give you a referral to how to reach that person. Like I already did that for David Carey about how did he get, a health plan to pay $2,000 to get their name on a billboard and that kind of thing with ABIL. And same thing, Leanne, we'll give you that referral during a break. We're happy to do that. So just come and approach us.
When I first took over the program, we were doing a little bit of marketing to school districts and just different youth programs in the high schools. And offering to come in and do presentations. And I wasn't very successful with that. And even, that's been 6 or 7, 8 years. The door for us in our school districts is a lot tighter than it used to be, as we've seen cuts and things. School districts, the special ed teachers do not have the freedom to maybe do a field trip to the Center for Independent Living like they did in the past. And so they really have to fight to get those. And so for me, having a contact, Leanne already is working in the schools, that's how I get in. If you're trying to market and offer it, it's a lot harder these days to find that window into school districts. Any other questions before we move on?
Hi, I was just wondering about partnering with, I know that here in Seattle I've been approached by people in disability physical therapy centers that really been interested in contacting and connecting with our organization. And is that the kind of place you would see people being referred to your organization from?
Yeah, absolutely. So our early intervention coordinator and I will go out and we'll do presentations at the rehab centers. We do target physical therapists a lot, occupational therapists. And a lot of times, they know that their services are ending with people. They're looking for that bridge, that community service, so that their client, their patient has support after they've finished their rehab services. And so that's, we go out at, some of our rehab centers have support groups that they host, so we'll go out there and do those. We do service trainings with their staff. That's a great way to kind of catch them and That's usually how we get those kind of referrals or let people know about the mentoring program and the early intervention program. Is getting into their staff meetings has been helpful. Did that answer your question? Okay, good. Our reintegration program, one of my favorite programs to work with, our staff there is going into the nursing homes and helping people who have the goal to transition out of the nursing home back into the community. And so our peer mentors can go in and talk with somebody and sit down and share about their own nursing home experience and how they transitioned out. Amina mentioned we're always kind of thinking of new ideas and how can we do this differently. And just last week I was talking with him, and we had a conversation over the last month about what's hard for you in your job right now, and or if you had more help somewhere, where would it be? And so him and I had kind of been going back and forth talking about it, and he said, you know what, I would love help filling out housing applications with people. He's like, you know, that takes hours with somebody, and he has arthritis, so him filling them out is very difficult. And he said, would the peer mentors be able to do that? I'm like, why not? You know, so it's not, you know, traditionally matching somebody, but it's certainly the peer mentor going in and giving resources and information, filling out applications. So we did a test run with, we made a kind of a trial match, and the mentor went in. I got her timesheet at 6 hours in one day. I called her. I said, is this right? That's a lot of time. And she said, yeah, we just got going. And she said, we did applications. And then the person said, could you open my mail? I don't trust anybody here. Would you mind? And so I said, hey, maybe not 6 hours. That's kind of a long day. But that was a great way for her to come in and support that individual. So it's always kind of thinking about how can we collaborate and talking to the staff about, listen, what's hard, what can we help with? Maybe there's a gap where a peer mentor can fill in and be a resource to you. So we also take referrals from our employment service. This might be somebody who's looking to return to work. A lot of our referrals from this program are really coming to our volunteer piece. These are individuals that need job skills or need something to put on their resume, or just simply figuring out, you know, can I do 2 hours? Can I do 4 hours? And really kind of building up their strength and understanding, you know, how has my abilities changed since my injury? So we can help with that.
So, and I'd like to say that we'd like this part to grow more, and finding mentors who are working and have time to mentoring has been a bit of a barrier. But we had one person that was doing it, and then our employment network hired him to be a job coach. So that's the other thing. If you have a really successful mentor, a lot of times then they end up working or going off to school or something else. So that's the good news when they leave that way.
Yeah. So who are these peer mentors? They're individuals who have disabilities. They're already living independently. They're integrated into the community. And most importantly, they have a desire to help somebody else do what they've done. They're people, usually when somebody calls in and they're like, I want an application, I'm interested, usually what they start talking to me about is, the reason why I want to do this is because I've learned so much, but I learned it the hard way. And I want to make somebody else's journey a little bit easier. Or, man, I never knew this thing existed. I wanted to step in and do that for somebody else because I wish I would have had this. And so, we always say there are people who've been there, done that. So they're willing to share that experience. They can be called after business hours. So that's one really great thing about having peer mentor volunteers is they're available when I can't be. They're there in the evenings. They're there in the weekends, and they can be available to meet with somebody when our offices are closed. Usually you've got to have a peer mentor that's a really good listener. It's not about them, it's about the individual that they're working with. So you've got to have that listening skills. And they've got to be people who are willing to confront bureaucracy and advocate for change. And so we will spend a little bit of time showing you some of our training and some of the materials and things we use to really help our peer mentors develop their advocacy skills.
So just to say, when they come in as mentors, they may not have all those qualities. We watch the ones they don't have develop over time with the peer mentoring they get from the other peer mentors. So, and the other thing I want to say about recruiting peer mentors is that sometimes your best mentors don't volunteer. You recruit them because you see they have something to offer and they don't even know it. somebody who's been quadriplegic 30 years and never had skin breakdown, they know something about how to live as a quadriplegic that most other quadriplegics don't know. But they don't know that. They may feel like they're a failure because they never did anything else after they got their injury.
That's one nice thing about the training is we're really clear with people when they're filling out this application and preparing to go through the training. They're not committed yet. We want them to come in and just listen, get information, because they may not know whether they can do this or not. And so it's completely fine for them to come in and say, I'm not sure, but I'll come in and hear what you guys have to say. And so we have a lot of people that come and realize, through the training that maybe there is something I can share. I do have information that's important. Yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to know how you guys define living independently. I mean, because I know a lot of people are feeling independent and they're not in control, but they're still in technical institutions. So how do you define that? I mean, is that important?
That they're making they're making their choices about their life.
Yeah.
Within the limited choices that are available to them. That's what independent living is. So most of the people we work with live in the community, but we just said we go out to rehab centers and we go out to nursing homes, particularly trying to get those folks that are, say, 65 and under out of those nursing homes. And they may participate in our programs before they get out of the nursing homes. They have a goal. We have one person who came to the peer mentor training program, just curious, was living in the community and realized that through going through the training, she was living in an abusive situation and decided to move into a nursing home, get away from that abusive situation. And then she showed up at my women's empowerment group last month and blew my mind. She's gone the full circle.
Yeah.
So
yeah, she's back in the community and independent again in her own place.
Beaming.
Yeah.
Beaming. And this is a person who has high-level needs.
So that's a person that came to the training, maybe like a year and a half ago?
Yeah.
Said, whoa, I need ABIL first before I do this peer mentor thing. Went back and worked on some things she needed to take care of, and hopefully we'll get her into one of our classes in the near future.
Yeah, because
now she's ready. But think of it this way, independence isn't a location. It's not a geographical place where you live. It's a philosophy. It's about decision making. So I don't live on my own. I live with family. That's my choice as a person with a disability. So for independence for me, that means I'm paying my share of the bills. So, I'm accountable. Doesn't matter that I'm with family. It's about me making decisions, me being responsible. So it's not about location. It's about decision making, responsibility. Yeah.
We have a couple.
it might take a minute.
Give it and
Be patient.
Just a second.
Testing. Hi.
Perfect.
So we have a couple questions, I think. I'm wondering what your policies, procedures are regarding consumers transitioning from being a consumer to being a peer support volunteer. Do you allow that to happen? Is there a certain amount of time they need to have been closed as a consumer?
Well, we don't have open consumers peer mentor, but we love it when they transition and are ready. They've reached their goals. They've done what they set out to do with our staff, and they're ready to be peer mentors. So we love that when that happens, and we don't have a time frame. It's the person saying, "Hey, gosh, I can do this now. I've done what I need to do. I'm going to help somebody else." It's about the staff saying it. You can usually tell, if somebody's ready, and so we don't limit it with time frames. We're excited when that happens, when somebody's ready to make that transition. And then you had another question?
Yes. As a parent, and I'm actually not working with IL in our state, but when my daughter became quadriplegic, I didn't know anything about anything. It changed our whole family's life. And do you have parents that can be mentors to other parents that are sitting in the hospital thinking, what am I going to do? Where am I going to go? Where am I going to turn? How am I going to figure this out? And am I going to have to invent the wheel myself? And we lived in a really rural area, and we just had to start with one thing after another. Finally, we got the schools to get an independent entrance into the schools, and it took years and years and lots of advocacy. but you know, parents just feel so alone.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah,
whether
absolutely.
their child's injured or at birth, you've
Yeah.
given birth to a child that you know is going to have challenges their whole life.
Right,
And
right.
that's something I'm wondering if some
Absolutely.
ILs do
So,
that.
so one thing is, if they are a child, we have right next door to us in the Disability Empowerment Center, the Training and Education Center, Parent Training and Education Center, and they
Okay.
do peer support for parents. So if it is a parent of a child that gets a disability, we refer them over to Raising Special Kids because that is their expertise, and they're a peer organization for parents.
And-
So that's one answer to your question.
Every state has a PIN, a Parent Information Network, and so if you research that, you can find the one that's in charge of your state. So luckily, they are right next door, so that's a great resource. Because our program, and I don't know if we've said this yet, but our program is 18 years old and over. So if they're a young child, we would refer them over to Raising Special Kids. But we definitely have families and siblings and parents that have gone through the peer mentor training class. I have a couple right now, her husband, while she's meeting with the individuals who has had the amputation, he's meeting with the family and talking them through resources and things. So we've definitely done that. And, you know, parents, as long as they buy into the IL philosophy, you know, that's, you know, my mom is the greatest informal peer for other parents. One of these days I'll get her to come through the training, and she's always like, no, I don't. I'm like, Mom, you know so much. You have all these resources. And she does that for coworkers and people she, you know, meets. Our electrician, I don't know how she finds these people, but, you know, so parents start talking, yeah, that's a great resource. And so if they're willing to go through the training and really buy into IL philosophy and believe, you know, that we're there to teach independent living skills and support somebody, yeah, they're a great resource. Yeah.
April, I heard you say that you don't let consumers that are open be mentors.
Mm-hmm.
So what if a consumer had higher level goals, like you know, say I'm helping them apply or try to get grants for graduate school, or something to that effect. Couldn't they be a mentor helping, because they want to give back, helping people with more simple goals?
Well, and I should clarify that. Thank you, Tim. I appreciate that. I should clarify that statement. So I will not let people who are open mentor if I feel like it's going to interfere with the goals they're working on. So sometimes I'll have somebody come to me and they really do have a compassion and a desire to help other people. But I will see, you know, that they've got some stuff that is important for them to work on. You know, I remember somebody who really wanted to mentor, but they had housing that they needed to work on. They were needing attendant care, and I was like, no, let's let you do that first. So I will look at it and say, you know, is this going to interfere with their own personal goals, or do they need to do that first?
The other thing is, everybody at our center isn't necessarily an open consumer that gets help from our center. 90% of what David does as an advocate, we don't require anybody to be an open consumer. Mm-hmm. He helps people navigate systems, and he'll have advocacy issues, and he keeps track of them, but he's not, they don't have to be. They may or may not be open consumers. He doesn't check to find that out. He just mentors them how to navigate that system. And so there are people that are involved in the center that that may not be open consumers, but may be working on things at the center. That helps you. So,
well, and I'm thinking of someone right now too. She has low vision, and she has just lost more sight. It's a progressive disability, and so she's a peer mentor with us, but we matched her with another peer mentor because this person has experience on technology that this lady is now needing. So she still comes and mentors at our peer mentor group, but she's also getting mentoring herself for a new issue that's
so
come
there's
up.
an example where we broke our own rules. So our rules are to support the program, not to limit the program. And so our program continues to change all the time to meet the needs of what's coming up for who needs mentoring. And so if it's appropriate, we'll refer them over to be open with somebody. In this case, she's been a long-time volunteer for us, and we decided to just do it another way because there were some barriers within the other department getting her served right now. and yet she was ready to go. So we didn't want that to stop her from what was already starting to happen naturally, because really, peer mentoring is a natural process that happens when you get people together. We're just helping get them together.
Yeah.
And there's a person behind you that's had his hand up.
One more thought. I mean, when you want to be careful is if you see somebody that's struggling with social or behavioral issues, those are really things that people need to work on, communication issues, before, have them work on that with staff before you consider transitioning them into more of the mentoring role. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Daniel Mellentine. I'm here from Paraquat Center for Independent Living in St. Louis. I
Welcome.
apologize that I was late, guys.
Happy that you're here.
Had a rough morning, but I'm glad to be here
Glad
and
you
look
made
forward to
it.
meeting you all. So I'm the new peer services manager at Paraquat, and we're implementing. We're starting over essentially, and we're trying to implement the good stuff and overhaul that which really didn't fulfill the IL philosophy. From that end, one thing I did as an ILS was that I had peers. As a former independent living specialist, I actually had participants working on a goal, an active IL goal of attaining peer support. So not just that they would attain peer support, but attain peer support to better communication skills. You know what I mean? So it was a means to an end for gaining these IL tools. I figure you guys utilize something similar to that.
Yeah. And we'll go through like the different goals that mentees commonly have, but yeah, communication is a big goal. So
And they do need to have goals. That's when they come to us, that's the point. They have a goal for what they want to do with this mentoring relationship. And that's why we want them to come through a staff person, because as you know, people have trouble identifying and clarifying goals in something that can be accomplishable. When people first come in, they want to set 25 goals, and it's, you can't get anywhere. So that's why we funnel them through a staff person first, so that by the time they get to the mentor, so it helps the mentor a lot because they're clear about what they're agreeing to work on together.
I was a bit confused. Are they tracked? I know that they're not an active.
Yes, and we'll tell you all about how we do it. That's what the next 2 days are about.
Excellent. And I don't want to put the cart before the horse, but I'm really interested to hear about outcome measures, because that's a tough one. We got to keep the lights on, and we got to show that our program is efficient and effective and timely and all that good stuff. I was wondering if that's going to be addressed.
we will talk about that. And we're going to talk about documentation from the peer mentor side, from how do we document services as the volunteers, and then how do we document for these consumers who are mentees. So we'll talk about it from both angles.
Thank you.
Yeah. One really important...
You got one more question
Do I have
here.
one more?
And then,
Oh, sorry.
Sorry. I'll wait for it to come up. Thank you. As I was noting that you asked the mentors to be involved in contact with the mentees at least twice a month, it brought up the question for me of when you're inviting someone into a mentor role and going through the training, do you set an expectation of a commitment time? For example, we're asking you to commit for 12 months to start out this program, so you develop a relationship with them, as opposed to someone, that not being clear, and therefore the potential of kind of churning or falling off, and that potentially damaging the relationship with the consumer.
Mm-hmm. We do not. So we haven't. What we wanted it to be is we wanted it to be flexible for the volunteers. So a lot of the volunteers, their hesitancy is, I've got this disability and things change for me all the time, and is this like another job for me? I have my own stuff to take care of. So we didn't want to say you have to do a certain amount of hours every month. You have to mentor on Thursdays and Tuesdays. We wanted it to really be something that the mentors and mentees negotiate together when they're introduced. And we'll talk about this more, but really it depends on what the goal is and how they agree to meet. Some of them, it's going to be a little bit longer, depending on the goal, depending on the disability. Others, if you go into a rehab center or nursing home, maybe you're meeting a couple of times, and then that person has reached their goals. So it really is a negotiation between the peer mentor and the mentee. My job is just to facilitate and know how are they going to be in contact, are they meeting, we do evaluations, all kinds of things we'll get into, to check on the progress and make sure the only time I'm intervening is if there's a problem or they're not working on those goals. So then I have an issue.
And just remember that that's why we have a dedicated volunteer coordinator she does a lot of assessment with these mentors before they ever get matched up with anybody. She's done an interview with them. They've gone through an orientation and training program. So by the time she gets through that, so she's seen them interact in groups, she's got to know them better, so she's got a sense of the kind of commitment they are and the kind of person they are. Are they a short-term commitment or a long-term commitment? Because that's another reason that's another way that you match people. Because somebody who's here because they're in town, they're from the Navajo reservation, and they're in town for a certain period of time for rehab and they're out anyway, that's a different kind of relationship that somebody else, I mean, some of the mentors end up being lifelong friends, but only some of them.
Amina brings up a really good point. I really do, Barry, screen for that during the peer mentor training so I can kind of know what is their ability to commit. So if I know they're job hunting right now, I know there's a good chance I might lose them in 3 months. Or if they're a student, I know there's going to be a limited time where I'm going to have them. So that doesn't prevent me from training them. I just have to have the awareness about, I need to be mindful of this person might be with us for a short time.
And
or
we never have to limit the people coming into the training other than if they can't function in a group in an egalitarian, respectful way. Because we lose nothing by them getting the training. The training is fabulous for everybody. I send new interns, I send new staff through that training if I can, because it helps them orient so well to independent living philosophy.
We'll talk more about the training, but we're actually sitting with people for 2.5 days during this training, so you get to know people pretty well and kind of gauge what's their motivation here. And that's really helpful because sometimes people come in with the idea that this is something that they're going to put up on their wall and get paid for eventually, and they're just here to, get the training from us. And so we really do kind of look at what's their motivation for being here. Yeah. And then I'll come to you guys over there.
Going back to parental involvement, we have developed a partnership with a parent center that has applied for a federal grant. And one of the requirements of the grant is that they work with an independent living center. So what we are thinking of doing once they get that grant, and we're just still thinking on that partnership, even if they don't get the grant, is establishing a support group for the parents and the individual, where the parents are in a support group when the individual is also at a support group, so they work together.
That's great. I'm just wondering, because of time, if you could jot down your questions, because we have so much of what we do answers all these questions. If maybe April could just go on a little bit, because I don't want us to not have enough time to finish this little segment.
So one important point, one of the most important points I can make with our peer mentors is we do not expect you to be, nor do we want you to be acting as a counselor. That is not their job. They're not there to be somebody's therapist. They don't take on that liability or the responsibility. That's what I'm there for. So we really enforce that with people. You're not taking on that role. We don't want you to. And we'll walk you through some of the ways we kind of guide people about what are conversations I can have, what are conversations I don't have where I find myself giving medical advice and telling people what meds to take and what not. How do I avoid that? And we'll walk you through that. So the mentees, I'm sorry, I'm realizing I'm blocking you. The mentees are obviously individuals with disabilities. They're able consumers, so they're already an open consumer with a staff person assigned to them. So they're working one-on-one with that staff person. They're filling out the goals sheet. They're filling out an intake form. And they're with that staff person for either 4 appointments or 1 month. And for exactly the reason Amina mentioned is that the staff can sit down with them and really figure out what are the goals, why are they here with us, how can a peer mentor help. Also gives the staff a lot of information for me about personality, what their interests are, even little things like, do they return phone calls? Is it better to, email them versus phone call? All of those things are helpful for me and the peer mentor to know ahead of time.
And then by cycling them through a staff person, that's where you start to get that accountability, because they're going to set goals that will then be tracked, whether those goals get achieved or not.
Right. They can work with the staff person on certain goals. So maybe the staff person is working with them on Social Security issues, which maybe I don't want a peer mentor do, because that's a very high-level skill to do. And so the staff will be working with that, but maybe the peer mentor is working on helping them learn how to use public transportation. So the staff person is always involved. They continue meeting with that individual, continue working on goals, and the peer mentor is coming in as an additional support, maybe to work on 1 or 2 goals that the individual has. Not every consumer is referred to the peer mentor program. If you're coming for a home mod, I don't know that all of them would want a peer mentor. They're there for the home mod. Some people would not be appropriate for a peer mentor. They're not ready. They need to do some things for themselves, communication, anger, some of those adjustment things. Maybe they do that first and then they come for a peer mentor. And again, not everybody would even be interested in having a peer mentor, find it useful or need it. So it's really a screening process to see if people are interested. So the ABIL mentors are working with anybody who is a consumer that has chosen to request a peer mentor, and they're working to help this individual on the independent living goals that they have. The mentors are agreeing to have regular contact with the mentee, and they must agree to be in touch with that mentee in some way, a minimum of 2 times a month. So the mentors are teaching specific independent living skills that are identified by the consumer before they get assigned to the mentor. And that could be anything from budgeting, cooking skills, computers. We get a lot of requests about, I just need to work on my self-esteem. I need to work on my knowledge about my disability. We get a lot of social rec goals where we're talking to somebody who hasn't left their house in 2 years, and they're really looking for somebody to help them connect in the community and get involved. That's always one of our highest requests, or for things around self-esteem and communication.
Self-advocacy, they often don't name self-advocacy as a goal, but then you realize they need it because they don't know how to speak up for what they need. And so sometimes additional goals get revealed in the process. And that, I remember when they were doing that whole evaluation of skills and how do you teach self-advocacy and how many people accomplish it, and we were like, how do we teach self-advocacy? Because nobody comes in and sets that as a goal, or very few people do. So that's true for peer mentoring as well. It often becomes something that happens in almost every relationship, but they don't come in asking for it.
Well, and we'll show you in some of the evaluation forms and things that we do where we provide the mentee and the mentor with the opportunity to tell us about what new goals are coming up. You've been working together 3 months now. Lots of new things could have happened, and so I'm communicating those changes to the staff. We can add those goals in. We're constantly communicating about what goals have been accomplished, and so it's an ongoing process. And so the peer mentors, again, they're providing support, encouragement, connecting people with community resources, and really advocating. Additional things that peer mentors can do for us, I mentioned the schools, where they go out and share their stories and answer questions. We also have them do things like maybe we've been asked to come and do a disability awareness and etiquette language training with a city or something like that, a hospital. We'll bring a panel of peer mentors to help us do that. And so, again, getting people to share their stories. Not all of your volunteers are going to be comfortable doing this. Usually out of 40 people, maybe I have 10 that are willing. And usually it's like,
now that 10, 5 of them are like total hams and love it.
Yes.
Or
yeah.
end up being after they do it a few times.
Yeah, usually about half of those are like, how big's the group? Do I have to talk for very long? But we try to make it as comfortable as possible. We have questions ahead of time. We do it in panels. So it's a great way for people to share their story, and really, again, helps us, have a panel with a lot of diversity where we wouldn't be able to really educate people on so many different types of disabilities and experiences. We're going to talk a lot more about the groups that we do, but just to give you an introduction, we do offer mentoring groups at ABIL, and this is one of the things that Amina and I in the last couple of years have been the most excited about, I think, and have really seen growth and development. And so we're going to talk a little bit more about that for you as we go on through the training. But we do monthly discussion groups. I call them, for those of us who are social workers or counselors, I call them growth groups. That's the term I prefer over more of the traditional support group. But it's mentors sharing personal stories. Sometimes they're giving the presentation, sometimes I am. We have people request different topics, and so I have to get educated and put a curriculum together. Sometimes it's just discussion. But what we did is we wanted this to be a place where mentors, mentees, consumers could come and have that safe place where they're getting good IL information and being able to learn about resources in the community through group mentoring. And then we also have volunteers, as Amina mentioned earlier, that do a lot of volunteering with us. They pick and choose how much they want to get involved. If they just want to do the mentoring, that's great. If they decide to expand and they have the time to do it or the desire to do it, maybe they help out at different events. Maybe they come into the office and volunteer. We have some mentors that will never be into our office because they are working and they have busy lives, and so they're mentoring and I'm talking to them on the phone about their next match, so they're not going to be in there day to day, but we do have people that come and do that and want to be at the center and have the time.
Yeah, we have some volunteer maniacs that are there when I leave and I'm a late person. Stuffing envelopes, whatever, because they just want to be useful and they love the atmosphere.
And it's their choice, so we just offer the opportunities. They pick and choose what they want to participate in. We're going to talk a lot more about how we get people involved in community advocacy. This is, again, has been something that's been really exciting for us the last few years, is seeing our mentors really expand and the volunteers jump into an advocacy role and really stepping out in the community and using those skills to make community change. So Amina is going to talk a little bit about kind of the debate around paid versus volunteer and kind of the history of that for peer support programs.
So there is that debate, and when I started, what I did also was I called around. Actually, I was in this postgraduate thing that through rehab services over in San Diego, and one of the projects I did was I called different independent living centers to talk to executive directors to see if that would be something I would want to do sometime. And I've been working for 24 years in the independent living movement, and I've never done that job after what I talked to them about. But I also was asking if they had peer mentor programs. This was back in the beginning. And so what I found was there were only a few programs back then. Montana had one of them, actually. Who's here from Montana? I know I got, yeah. And theirs was a paid volunteer program, and they were doing it because they were a rural community, and that was the way to be able to have peer support available in a very rural community. And in the recovery movement, in the mental health movement, people here aware of the recovery movement. It's like the independent living movement philosophy within the rehab, within mental health system. In Arizona, there's a lot of that. Recovery Innovations is one of the leaders in that area, and they're actually a national company that has programs all over the country. And they pay their mentors just enough to screw up their Social Security benefits. That's my gripe. But so we debated it. Are we going to pay or not pay? And in the end, we decided to not pay, and this was the consensus of staff and mentors. Several of our staff now were our first mentor group that went through actually right before I got to ABIL. They are now staff members and doing outreach to rehab centers and nursing homes in particular, 2 of them. And we decided to have it be a volunteer program because they could be there after hours. And because what we find when we meet people who, as you know, often in centers, you meet people who are like, where have you been all my life? My God, I'm finally here. You get it and stuff. Is that their life is so surrounded. Volunteer is somebody that's there because they want to be with you. And people are just so like provider, whatever, doctors. It meant a lot to them that somebody was choosing to be with them. Right away, that's a self-esteem booster. Somebody's here because they want to be, right? And also because we wanted people to get mentoring and become mentors. And so a portion of our mentor recruiting comes from people who got mentoring and they want to give back. So it starts to foster that sense of responsibility. And we wanted them to be volunteers also because they were available at times and could do things we couldn't do as staff persons. And so we've had to redecide this only one other time in our history of doing it, whether we would do it or not. But what we do, and we understand the idea, and it's okay either way. We understand the idea about paying. You're paying people for their expertise. What I see in the recovery movement in the mental health system is those jobs as peer mentors, and I love them, by the way, and I love what they do for each other, but it does not move them out into the community in other roles. I haven't seen that. It's not getting them jobs in other places. I'm worried about it getting them stuck there. But within that movement, it's fabulous, and I'm happy they're there. So we decided it was better to keep it as volunteers. And so the truth is, as I said, mentoring relationships like a natural relationship. You're just kind of playing matchmaker to help it work. And so, can we go back? Thank you. So it's really that idea about being a friendship that's being developed. And so we can go, and these are some of our mentors here talking. So we decided, these are all different places that we have funding today. There might be a couple of others. We have a little Desert Schools grant for our Living Well. And when we did this presentation in Baltimore, the person that we did it with, Tom, he actually got mentors who were graduates from the Living Well with a Disability program. And that's another great place because it's a great program. It's just, our peer mentor program started out being 40 hours long, but we can't get anybody to do that anymore these days. Damn it, all that stuff is accessible, and they're just out there doing their lives now. They just, they don't want to hang out with us that much. So, so we had to kind of shrink our training down. So that's another great way to find mentors is through that Living Well program because it's a great program. So we are looking at, because our state agency, we have managed care in Arizona for Medicaid, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's a very well-run program. Now, it wasn't always, but it is really well-run. People get excellent health care. They get as good a health care as I get on my plan from my agency. And because of changes with Olmstead and things, there's some opportunities. Already, behavioral health system does get money for peer support, for offering peer support, and so we are because we have good allies in our Medicaid agency, are looking at how to change our waiver because we've never had traditional Medicaid. We've always had a waiver program to adjust it so that we can get money for Social Security benefits counseling and for peer mentoring. But right now, we can't. But the center in Montana, I think he's in Helena, he gets money through Medicaid for the Living Well program. That's another thing we eventually could maybe get money, but the way ours is set up, we can't yet. So they bill through Medicaid, and that's what pays for the Living Well program, and then that helps them with their volunteer recruiting and training. So this is something that April has researched now, that there is new guidance about this and what the peer support, some requirements for peer support care, and it's at this download which you've got the link to. So that's interesting because that's fairly new, and really it was for this that you uncovered this, right?
Right.
And knowing that our access agency is trying to fix this up for us.
Right, and the main guidelines from this directive is that if you are going to try to apply for funding through the Centers for Medicaid and Medicare, is that you really need to document and prove that there's supervision, that there's care coordination, and you must have training and certification for your peer mentors. So if you're a program that's not doing that, you're not going to be able to even attempt to apply for that funding. So this letter is just a one-page, the only guidance that they've given about what you should do if you're interested in any type of funding through that.
So there's another potential funding source that could be available, and as we know, Medicaid is different in every state, but so that might be something we might even look at in the future. Okay. So this is just a little bit about Arizona. As I said, we have a population, that's been growing ever since I've been there. It's been a boom state. 6.5 million people. Over half of them are in Maricopa County, which is the county that we're in that's as big as the state of Rhode Island. So we only have something like 15 counties in our whole state. So when you cry to me that you've got 23 counties to cover, I can't comprehend what that means to me, you know what I mean? Because we have 14 for the whole state or something. Arizona is not into government, basically. So we cover Maricopa County, Pinal County, which is just south of us, between us and Tucson area, and Gila County, which goes up into the mountains a bit. And both Gila County and Pinal County have population centers like at the opposite ends of the counties where there are people located. So we're learning how to expand into those areas, and that's a goal for us in the next couple of years. Maricopa County, well, I said it's big, huge. And so that's why we did it this way. But I just want to emphasize, we started this program when we had, a much smaller staff, 18 staff, and at that time, remember, always half of our staff at least is the PAS program. So, we were little, So it wasn't about the size, it was about the decision to go that direction. Inappropriate referrals, barriers. Did you want to talk about this one?
Yeah, I'll just really quickly.
Yeah, we'll bring this up. We'll stay together for this part.
Okay. So we know there's a lot of barriers to starting and maintaining this kind of program, and so we wanted to just briefly talk about some of the common barriers that we across the nation that programs experience. And so some of you are probably nodding your heads knowing this as you probably encountered these, but inappropriate referrals. Sometimes staff, might look at the peer mentors as a place where they can put that really hard consumer, the one that calls 15 times a day, and they just want them to have somebody else to call. And so that can be a barrier. Making effective matches. Sometimes it is hard to find mentors that are willing and able to take on that real responsibility and be motivated, be responsible. The role of the mentor, sometimes mentors get off track and they do think they're there to be the counselor, the best friend, the mom, the neighbor.
Get over worried about the
feel responsible for the choices that somebody makes, and that can be a barrier to trying to run these kind of programs. Occasionally inappropriate behavior. We haven't had a lot of that. I think we've been pretty lucky, but that does come up, on both sides. Inappropriate behavior on the mentee where they think the mentor's there to clean out their garage and do their laundry. Same thing with the mentor. Maybe they think that they're supposed to be in charge of the decision-making process. So,
I'll give you an example. There was a community advocate. She always showed up to transportation hearings and did things like somersaults before she testified, and just would.
She did.
She does. She does. So, and she always undecided she was going to be a peer mentor, and really enthusiastic. And in some ways, she's a good advocate, and in some ways, she's so inappropriate. And we're like, okay, do we let her take the training or not? So we decided to let her take the training and then gently guided her to other activities that she could be involved with, because she just would confuse anybody working with her. But there's other ways that she gets involved and shows up to our advocacy events.
She's very knowledgeable.
She's great to have on a march.
Yeah.
She is.
Another thing that's always hard is the constant need for recruiting new people, new mentors, new mentees. It's a lot. It's a lot to do. And how often do we offer trainings? Are we getting enough mentees to keep our mentors busy? These are all issues that we face.
And that balance, we've got too many mentors and not enough mentee referrals to keep them busy and interested. Now we have, too many mentees and not enough mentors, and we just can't find a right mentor for this mentee because of geography or something like that. So it's always messy.
And then number one that I usually hear, transportation. How do I get people together? We are in a place where, Phoenix, we have lots of public transportation. But if you go right outside of that where I live, nothing. It's cotton fields. There's no public transportation. How am I going to match somebody that lives in that area where the peer mentor is 50 miles away? How do I do that? So all of us, whether we're a rural center or we have both, we face those challenges of how do I get people together, how do I figure out how to match them and have that interaction. So those are all really common barriers that we're going to face. Funding, of course, technology, all of those are things. And then, of course, like Amina mentioned, maybe we have the wrong person for for the job. Maybe we have somebody who doesn't really like people and is not going to be organized, and that can be a real barrier for the program to keep going.
In most cases, you're not going to want an introvert to do this job because it's so people intensive. Another barrier is the mentee. The mentee has to take responsibility to have a mutual relationship and interact and contact the mentor too. It's not just a one-way street, and so sometimes it doesn't work out because they're not willing to take, as you know, take responsibility for their own goals or their own participation. And that's why when we tried to duplicate this program, working with people entrenched in the DD system, the This Is My Life program, it didn't work. They had never had a private phone call in their life. They went from a group home to a day program or sheltered workshop. They had no idea how to have that relationship. They wanted the mentor to take them to the movies and pay for their way. And so we really had to do a quick right turn and really do that program in a different kind of a way. So
we just want to turn it over to you guys for just a minute and see, does anybody have comments about barriers? Because I know all of us who are currently running programs, I'm sure we've got a list of things that are frustrating or challenging about doing this. Yeah.
Well, I know one thing that we have had challenges with is finding appropriate mentors, and then issues as far as appropriateness of mentees, and really risk and liability and safety of the consumer and staff, as far as, you know, we have people who are consumers who may have quite a criminal history that we may not find out about that. And so, like, how do you deal with the issue of if somebody's working with somebody on the weekends or at night, and if there's a crisis, what kind of support
We're
is
going to talk to
available?
you about that a lot. Those are the kind of things that keep me up at night. So we have very clear policies about those. We'll walk you through those. But, yeah, those are huge concerns as you're trying to do this program. Tim?
Find gender to be an issue.
Sure.
So April, do we match men with men and women with women, or vice versa? Or
Typically not. Typically not. We did when I took over, and I, as a social worker, and my intensive liability fears, I think they put that into our curriculum.
Which is good, because that's where we've had some sticky situations.
Yeah. So I really changed that, and it's not an official policy, it's just something I do since I'm in charge of that and in control of that, is I typically will not match male and female. Now, there's some rare cases where I will. For example, I have a GED mentor. He's male. He's awesome. He's the only one I have that can do GED stuff. So I might send him in to work with somebody, but they're meeting in a public place. They're meeting at the ABIL office for both of their protection. So, yeah, we'll talk a little bit more about that. But that's an issue, and it's always something you want to be aware of and be careful about.
I have a question.
Yeah.
How about training your staff? Because I sent out an email saying I'm starting this new program, and how the ways, since I had consumers, I know they could be helped. Didn't get a single response. So I'm thinking, I know there's needs out there, so I'm not sure. Is there a training for the staff or some ideas you can give us?
Yeah, we are going to talk about that. That is a big barrier.
Yes.
And we're facing that barrier right now within our own agency, as there have been staff changes, because some staff want to hold on and they don't understand how the peer mentor program can work. One of the things that can help is we had peer mentors come and talk to an agency meeting and talk about what they did, and we've highlighted them in our newsletter, the stories, just kind of prime the pump to help them think better about how to do it. But it's not, that can be one of your biggest barriers.
You just have to keep working on them.
Yes, you do. Just like you have to keep working on getting the funding for your volunteer coordinator. The equal amounts of keep at it.
Yeah, and we'll talk more about that. That is a huge, huge issue.
Yeah.
Are all the mentors people with disabilities? Like you mentioned,
for the most part, but we've talked about that there have been family members. So in the past, for instance, I remember when we had a sister of a person with a disability that did do some mentoring. But for the most part, 98%.
Just like you said, help with GED.
That's right.
That could be possibly
That's
someone.
Right. It's based on the goal that they've got.
And he is an individual with a disability. He just happens to have that.
As it turns out. But yes, we have had in the past, and that's been the case. They've had a skill that was needed, and most of them had relatives that had disabilities and wanted to offer their service.
We've also, had professionals that have come through the training that, did not have disabilities. We had for a long time a lady who was a DDD CPS, Child Protective Services case manager, and she was amazing, but the thing we really screened for in the beginning was that ABIL philosophy. She really believed in ABIL philosophy. That was what was important to us, and she was also really good with boundaries. She knew that she wasn't there to be their case manager and counselor. She was their peer mentor.
So that she kind of worked with some of the stickier consumers that didn't have good boundaries, because she was so good at that.
Yeah. So we have had that. In fact, I have a lady coming through our next peer mentor training who's just retired from DDD, and she's excited and, again, has really strong ABIL.
We make them honorary people with disabilities.
One thing I'm looking to utilize that I think sort of untapped resource is actual peer attendants, people who have done attendant service and been through the grind and the rigor, and there's actually a lot of need in the community for I guess respite in a sense that's not a physiological sense, but that people have someone to lean on when some of those times are difficult and someone that they can communicate with. Have you guys used much of an attendant peer program?
I want to say that this 2,000 people that we employ, and we have like 10 or I don't even know now, maybe 15 support coordinators. They're all, we'd have 20 because they're each working with 100 people. That's a way that our center is peer that's different. Some of those 20 staff members have disabilities. Most of them are family members who took care of a family member and then lost that family member, or that family member moved out and whatever, and came in to work as a supervisor working with the 100 people that need attendant care and the 100 employees that they're working with. There's more that we could do in that area, and that was what I woke up thinking about the videos that I wanted to make related to that. Little 6-minute, about like how to avoid decubes by the people who've actually done it best, and what do attendants need to know when they're working with people with chemical sensitivities and environmental illness. Huge problem to recruit attendants. Really, really, really hard. There's more we can do about that, and then you may know something that you've done in that area that I don't know of.
We have certainly had a couple of attendants come through the program, and over the years, a few of them, of course, they're working, and so sometimes the volunteering piece conflicts with, them trying to get paid as an attendant. But one of my really great peer mentors right now, Ida, is a caregiver, and so she does that, and she also mentors for us. So, definitely happens. I think the commonality there is that caring spirit, that helping spirit. So, they're naturally people. They wouldn't be doing that job anyway, so there's a naturalness there that
and see, she knows that, but I don't know that. But she knows it because she's more intimate with Ida than I am, right? But I know Ida because she's all over the place all the time, helping out.
You've been talking quite a bit about people's personal lives in the community for mentoring. I'm wondering if you will be addressing anything that has to do vocationally, because I know that the peer mentoring, that there is a value to having that in the workplace, not only for the employer, but for the individual and for other employees within the company that surround that individual. And there's so many legalities that personally that I ran up against, and including agency legalities such as Social Security and their take on what vocational is supposed to look like. So will you be at some point addressing what happens in the workplace as far as peer mentoring?
Not really.
Not really.
No, that's not something we've done much of. That's something we may have you talk a little more about at another point in the training, to bring up the issues that you're aware of. But one of the issues you mentioned is an issue for people on Social Security disability, that letting Social Security know they're volunteering can jeopardize their Social Security. And I don't know if you know that.
The job coaching also, the terminology that surrounds what is a coach or a trainer on the job. I've had people put their Social Security at risk over the issue of coaching.
And were they volunteer coaches?
Yes.
Yeah, yeah, so just be aware of that Social Security could say if they're able to volunteer, then maybe if they're not disabled enough to be on Social Security. So,
And that may be where, not having an hours requirement is helpful, because you could have somebody that, has the skills and the desire, but you're letting them do it for 2 or 3 hours a month, and they're doing it by phone and email. And so that's a little bit different looking than if they're doing it 20 hours a month and more like a job.
it hasn't come up much, but I'm very much aware of it because of all these years working the WIPA program, and it has come up for none of our other people that weren't our volunteers about it. So it is tricky.
And then one thing to mention, we did have a little bit of exploration recently.
Could you not tape that part, please?
We did recently, our employment office was looking for someone to be a job coach, and they recruited from our peer mentor program to do that. And so they're paying the individual, and so they're having him go in as a job coach. But this is brand new, and it's been pretty limited. They've only been doing it with him about 6 months. We are completely out of that. That is their thing with him, and he's actually like a paid employee, so we're not involved in that.
We haven't been aware of the employer issues. What we've just been aware of is the difficulty recruiting mentors for that purpose. So
One of the problems that sometimes happens is that when someone comes with that kind of support needs and they bring a mentor along, I'm happy to hear about all of this training, because the mentor can create the issue that's going to cost them their job. And I was firsthand with that, because the mentor who didn't realize that they would be required to follow the employer rules the same as the employee and refused to do that costs the person, their job. And so hearing more about what you're training here is going to be vital, I think, in the future for vocational folks with jobs and et cetera.
And then we'll take one more question, then maybe we'll head to lunch. Yeah.
Okay, so you were talking about jeopardizing the benefits of people with disabilities using, now, is that specifically supplemental security income?
no.
Or
Social Security is Social Security. When you go on it, you say that you're not able to work for 12 months, and I'm telling you that the Social Security field rep, if they knew you were volunteering 20 hours a week, would say, what's the difference between volunteering and working? Looks to me like you can work.
Okay, so that is also Social Security disability is what you're talking about.
SSI or SSDI, it's the same thing. It's a proof of being too disabled to work.
How is Social Security going to know about them volunteering?
How would they know that? That's a good question.
That's my point. I don't think they
That's a
should
good
know.
point. Thank you. I just needed to say it. We're saying, how would they know it? They're only going to know if you're going to tell them. That's right.
And then I saw.
And when people come up for their disability determination review, they answer a questionnaire, and they have to make a choice about how to answer that questionnaire. Somebody else?
I was just going to point out that there is some new legislation going on through work incentives, so we need to be really careful about what was and what is now, and I don't know exactly how that works out. Employment, that part of employment is not my specialization.
Are you talking about that has changed or could change?
It has.
Okay. So, I don't know about that, but
getting qualified benefits planning when you're working is definitely, and there are very few people who are qualified to do that.
Thank you. Yep.